Hey, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun.
And we start today with a tweet from Jen D. Jen D said, you could make this episode 4 hours long. So
Totally could do 4 hours, but you know what? That would be people who are trying to listen and have their lives. We like yesterday where I got no work done because I was watching all these different things going on. I mean, in the States and in Canada and in Vancouver, there were so many things going on.
I was locked in. What was it, 7 a.m. with the Michael Cohen testimony? And I got to say, before we even get into, because we're going to talk Canadian politics, there's enough about the U.S. everywhere. It's noisy. However, by yesterday evening, I was incredibly grateful to be Canadian because of what I was witnessing south of the border. Looked like a made-for-TV episode of Law and Order with horrible partisan politics in behind it.
Yes.
And at least the way we conduct ourselves here, there is some level of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Hope too, I think. Because I look at the States, I go...
Patrick says dignity. I'll go with that too. Hope,
Well, because
yes.
I look at what's going on in the States and I'm going, and Cohen's doing all the stuff, and I'm going, you know what? Trump's just going to keep on going, keep on trucking.
So what can we do here closer to home? Well, we were trying to struggle in our morning meeting here whether to start in the city of Vancouver, then go out to the province of British Columbia, then go federally. But no, our woman in charge here, Amanda, said you got to start federal. So we're going to start federal, right? Big day.
There's a theme, I think. So we'll kind of touch on it, and I think there's a theme going on today.
We do. We have a thread.
Yeah.
What? Speaking of threads, before we get into it, your
Do
Twitter
you like my
feed,
clothes, my threads?
Your threads, and I noticed the new haircut.
It's a bit
I went
short.
French braid. No time. Your Twitter handle?
George _Affleck.
_ very important. You can follow us at this podcast at UnSpun Podcast. We're getting some good feedback there. Also love how Amanda, who is the brains behind it, puts out really cool political topics that are a good place to sort of access some conversation starters. I'm at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, and you can always find our podcast at theorca.ca. So with that all out of the way, let's talk Jody Wilson-Raybould. And when you sat down to watch the hearing yesterday, your thoughts?
I was not expecting. I was skeptical that she had much in that because I thought, well, Trudeau's going to let her do this. They must know what she has, and it can't be much. But wow, she really delivered some powerful things.
She named names.
She named a lot of names, and there's going to be a few people who are going to be fired over the next several days, weeks, for sure.
Speaking of fired, it struck me that when you see a situation like this, you think, okay, well, that's got to be the Liberals versus the Conservatives, or the Liberals versus the NDP, or the NDP versus Conservatives, whatever. This is friendly fire. This is Jody Wilson-Raybould.
Very unusual.
Holding like the highest position, really, in Justin Trudeau's caucus.
Yeah, and governments don't get defeated; they defeat themselves quite often. So, when you either lose because you become too arrogant, or you have internal battles and things start to fall about behind.
Both are happening.
Both are happening for the Liberals right now. But definitely, when your caucus starts to fall apart, when there's division behind the scenes, and in this way so publicly, then it's never a good sign for a government.
I find it fascinating that Jody Wilson-Raybould was so clear in what she was putting forward in her statement that went extra long. I really also liked the pacing of the you get to ask questions, how it was managed, how is it the speaker?
It was less
the chair. Thank you.
And it was less comparing it to what was happening in the States too, where there was such a partisan. There was a bit of a partisanship
and
yesterday,
now the Democrat, and now the Republican.
Yeah, and it was a bit of that yesterday in Canada, but not as clearly aggressive in the States about trying to make him look like he was not legit.
I found it interesting though. There were a couple who were like, "And on this day, or was it that day? Or was it this day?" You could tell the people that are like, "Oh my God, we were not expecting her to say all that."
I didn't bring a big enough notepad.
It was quite something, but I have to say, and this is not a political statement on my part, I felt like, whatever happened, I felt like she articulated a situation where she was standing up to power in a way that there's so many reasons to not do that.
Oh yeah, I mean from a backroom point of view, and in federal politics, the backroom is quite large and it's controlled by quite often an elite group of people, and has been forever.
Yeah.
You're taking on a lot of people, not just the Prime Minister. You are, as a career as a politician, to do what she did, it may still be a career ending for her in politics, but it also could send her into orbit for possible, prime ministership.
Which is the other side. Does she run? Do you think? Eventually, is that the only reason that she would stay?
Well, there's telling that she's willing to stay in caucus, and the prime minister is willing to stay in the caucus. There's two reasons for that. One, the prime minister needs to keep his caucus united behind the scenes. So this is obviously not united what's happened, but if he can bring them all back in, and if he can do something behind the scenes with a caucus that unites them, so they don't start trying to kill him, and get him whatever way caucuses, behind the scenes happen. He's going to try and do that.
And unicorns and
they'll be divided. Some people will support her, and some people will support the prime minister, and so then they're going to divide, and then the Conservatives will see that as opportunity. And the other thing is, what is Jody Wilson-Raybould's long game? Is she thinking, okay, this is a stepping stone for prime minister, or mayor of Vancouver, or premier of BC? What is her goal? She says it's just because she wanted to tell her truth, but she's, I'm sure, has ambitions, and it would be interesting to see how that goes. So they both want to stay in the caucus, keep her. So how that will work and how uncomfortable those caucus meetings will be interesting to be a fly on the wall.
Speaking of uncomfortable, this whole, what the Liberals must be looking at as a big mess, was an absolute gift to the official leader of the opposition.
As an ex-politician, this is like as good as it gets.
And?
Scheer came out and did this press conference, and he clearly had either memorized what he was going to say, or he was reading cue cards, or it was very stiff. And from my point of view, if you have this opportunity, the only thing you have to express is passion about how outraged you are, and how then, yes, you demand the prime minister's resignation. That is in opposition. How you come out, you say, this is outrageous. You don't have to say much more than that. That's all you have to say. This absolutely is outrageous. We all heard what she had to say. Absolutely, the prime minister must resign today. That kind of approach, where he was like quite stiff, and
he was
inexperienced, I think, in his with media, I think.
It looked like he was overthinking it and nervous, knowing the magnitude of
For the guy who wants to be the next prime minister, he needed to come stronger, and I think Jagmeet Singh did a better job.
Tell us about Jagmeet Singh.
Well, he did. He kind of had a bit of passion. Even he didn't actually, I think, express it strong enough in this opportunity as opposition to really go to town on this. But I think you'll see more of that. They're going to keep playing this up. But 8 months,
As we head towards the election, as so many Canadians some had to work, others of us, I know Amanda and I were sitting glued to the TV trying to get other things done. Watching this all unfold, I just was sitting there going, how is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau not the first to speak at the end of Jody Wilson-Raybould's Q&A that went epically long, there's no doubt. And when people are like, oh, Justin Trudeau is in the war room right now with his legal team, and it's like, you had to have some idea of what was going to happen here, and your message, for him to delay, it kind of reminded me, going back to U.S. politics, of Hillary Clinton taking till the next day to concede to Donald Trump when he won the election. You go in, you face the music, you
Ken Sim in Vancouver. It's over. Let it go.
Right? Similar, for sure. That's a good analogy. It just seems like Justin Trudeau should have been better prepared. And
you paint the worst case scenario and the best case scenario, and you build your strategy around that, right? You go, okay, we kind of roughly know she's going to throw us under the bus. We don't know how much stuff she will present.
They didn't
know.
Back up.
And they go over a few times, like a show I was just watching. Anyways, and she was taking notes, which she made very clear. She took detailed notes, which there was a tweet or something you said, I think on
It's
Twitter.
A good lesson. Everybody should take notes.
Everybody should take notes. And in politics, you can actually sometimes tell the kind of politicians that are taking notes around you in a caucus. And you always, and in caucuses, there's this sort of unwritten rule that, what you're talking about is in camera, which we've talked about before. This is stuff that's behind the scenes. We're talking, being free to say what we want.
From a journalistic space, it would be off the record.
Off the record,
not for
this is
not to be repeated elsewhere.
We're just
not to be quoted. Don't share it with your friends at the dinner table.
Exactly. You're just kind of spitballing. You're kind of trying to figure out your way you're going on issues, and so in this case, she was having these meetings and taking these copious notes, which she then read out, and then the Prime Minister comes out and said they're absolutely not true. Nothing she said is
disagreed.
Not accurate at all.
I disagree. It's like, what's to disagree with?
Yeah.
the timeline fits. She said she felt pressure. He could have come out and said she should have quit, or she should have stood up in that moment in September when it first happened. Like, she was rattling off the dates with the notes and stuff. And there was a way, in my opinion, to manage this, that it wasn't so polarizing. And to be so polarizing when you're supposed to be on the same team as Liberals was shocking to me, because I'm so used to it being crossing the aisle polarization, right? I'm a novice at this, though, so what do I know?
Well, and she may still cross the aisle. Who knows?
What did Gerald Butts have to do with all this? Was he just a sacrificial lamb, or do you think he was the guy that was intimidating her, and then she said, he's out, or I'm gonna?
No, I think
just off the record.
I think they thought that would take the story off, take the heat off.
Didn't.
Like, sacrificial lamb. He obviously, as the chief of staff, would have been a part of that, but she didn't bring him up.
Just a little bit.
He was with some other people.
He was in the room.
The Minister of Finance, his team, and that was interesting.
Bill Morneau said today, as a time of taping, he's like, I don't agree with what she's saying. Yeah. Which, I mean, there's.
She came across as very credible, and from a spin point of view, and for unspinning that to come off that credible is impressive. She went on for hours, and they actually said, "Do you need a break?"
Yeah,
and,
they said,
and she said, "No, I'm good. I can hold it."
What she said was, "I don't even know what time it is."
Yeah.
And they said it's 5:53 p.m.
Yeah.
And she had started at 3:30, so she had been 2+ hours in, and they said, "Do you need more water? Do you need a bathroom break?" She said, "No."
And there's some tweets that just came out before our taping, was some tweets about her saying how she's, what did that one tweet say, hysterical? Not hysterical. She's not
credible. She seemed like she's not able to handle it. She's stressed
handle
out.
Handle pressure.
And
I think that was today from
Liberal MP Jody Sidhu.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, were you watching the same day as I was watching? Because she came across as very calm. Maybe behind the scenes she's not, but certainly I don't think the people in Canada saw that.
The tweet was about her father, Bill, being the one that's pulling the strings.
Oh yeah.
And he was on Global BC Morning today.
He was?
And did an interview with Sonia Sunger. It was a good interview until his last answer was really awkward and odd.
It was weird. He talked about the looks of his daughters, their appearance, how one is better looking than the other.
Like Jody got his looks and his other daughter's more attractive.
Total
it's like,
weird dad.
Stop talking!
I know, because he's been so strong and supportive of her, and then to suddenly say something like this kind of discredits him. It's kind of like dorky things that the Wilkinson's been saying this week. I mean,
can we move on to provincial? I like that segue. Well done, sir. Well, let's start with the legislature, because all's quiet on the controversy at the BC Leg, really. I mean, when have we had a time where Alan Mullen was so quiet? That's what Patrick keeps coming back to.
Yeah, well, and they had that big meeting of the legislative
committee.
Anyway, the lame, whatever it's called, the Legislative Assembly people. Anyways, they had a big meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
We assume based on the second report that Plecas has presented to them, and the first one they released it in half an hour. This one's still in hold. They have, and we talked about it last week. I thought maybe after that meeting they would have come out and said something, but they have now. It's been pretty much.
They said they wanted the legal teams involved for Gary Lansing, Craig James, the clerk and sergeant at arms. The legal teams have said, we would appreciate it if these reports aren't released publicly until our clients are given the opportunity to respond, because it was messy last time where they went public. Everybody had an opportunity to react to it, and then 10 days later, the rebuttal came out. So I think maybe handling it in a little bit of a quieter fashion might be a better thing, but it seems like it's taking forever, because at last check we had a judge that was going to be looking at things who had 10 days to figure out what was going on there. Apparently now the 10 days has been expanded.
It's always great when lawyers and judges get involved in cases.
Not good.
It's going to be expensive.
But Darryl Plecas, Speaker of the House, was on with Simi Sarah on CKNW on Tuesday, and I got to hear some of it, and he, much the same. Still, like, you don't even know
we
the
haven't
level.
got to close to what's
we'll
happening.
Just wait, tip of the iceberg, I wish he would just actually say out loud or write down or tell somebody what the whole iceberg looks like.
Yes. Does that make him the Titanic heading towards the iceberg, or is the government the Titanic? Who's the iceberg? Who's Leonardo DiCaprio, and who is? Anyways.
Keith Baldry.
He's
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Same hair.
Yes. Does that make Richard Sussman? No, never mind.
He's got some dance moves though. We
He
saw
does,
that this week.
We didn't mention that, though, with Jagmeet Singh winning in
That's
Burnaby.
right. There was that whole little thing in the middle that we had,
There was that
by-election where we had a win for NDP, a big deal for Jagmeet to get into the House of Commons.
Yeah.
But we also had a Liberal win in Quebec, fairly healthily, and so that kind of
in a surprising.
Well, and it goes back to, I guess we didn't really touch on this, and the politics of Quebec and the politics of the rest of Canada, and can Justin Trudeau, after all of this, still win to be Prime Minister? And I think
Jobs, George.
Jobs.
What about the jobs in Alberta?
Yep, and the jobs
doesn't matter.
in Ontario.
No,
and
doesn't
the jobs. So it's
how about renting? How many years did you rent?
A long time, until I was 34 or 35.
How many roommates at your max? How many maximum roommates in one scenario did you have?
Well, I lived in a dorm for a while, and then I had one roommate, worst case. And then I had a wife, and then I had and now I have another person that lives with me, and then she seems to be working out.
You keep her? Good idea.
But there's all these other things. These kids that are running around. I don't know. Are they renters?
No.
If they would buck up, that would be great.
They're
dependent. Yeah, they
But
certainly
if
are.
you were BC Liberal leader Andrew Wilkinson, you would be saying how fun and what a rite of passage renting is. And when I heard this, I thought, oh, well, that's not a very smart thing to say publicly. And then I saw the backlash happening, and then I thought, you know what? I might be guilty of saying something similar, because I will say to my 11-year-old, knowing that it's a completely different world now, if you have an expectation that you're going to pop out of university with a student loan on your back, luckily interest-free at this point, and launch into owning a place, you're sorely mistaken, my friend. You're going to need to live within your means, save your money.
Unless this podcast really takes off and we walk away with millions, and then I can give all my kids free condos.
By the way, we're up for sponsorship if you need it.
That's right.
So far.
Go to email me. It's such a kind of a dorky thing to say, and I think I know the feeling when you're in my case, in city council, and you're trying to tell a story that relates to what's the issue, the policy you're debating or whatever, and you're going down a path, and then suddenly you just go off into some weird little, and you're like, oh my God, and I'm saying this on camera, and now I'm trapped. I'm saying it. It's coming out of my mouth. Stop, and then of course, and in my experience, I've done this, and then you're being attacked or whatever for, in my case, hours. I didn't have anything I don't remember. There's a couple things that came out in the media, but generally, it's a lot of pressure when you're in those things, and you're trying to. I think in the case of Wilkinson, he's trying to be, hey, Joe in the street, kind of, hey, I'm just like everybody else, and he's got a doctorate and he's a lawyer, and he went to Harvard, and he's just like me.
But you know what, though? We can't give people a hard time over being successful.
No.
Just don't try and dumb down the current reality into something that was applicable 20, 30 years ago. It's just a different city. It's a different experience. That doesn't mean that we don't teach forward our lessons, and our lessons were, if you want to live in downtown Vancouver when you're 22 years old, you should probably rent a place that isn't palatial with a couple of friends, make ends meet. I basically lived in a glorified closet for 3 years of my life because I wanted to have a dog. And so I had 4 other roommates and a dog, and I lived in the closet, literally this big, enough room for a bed.
How long were you in the closet, Jody?
I was in the closet for many years, George. It was lovely. And then I came out of the closet. See? There's an example of how you can put your foot in it.
Yeah.
There it is.
What was your rent?
Talking.
How much did you pay for your first place in Vancouver?
I remember vividly, for the basement suite I moved out with my girlfriend Lisa Elliott, right, 18 years old, it was $375 for a moldy, 5-foot-high ceiling basement suite in Kitsilano.
With 2 bedrooms, or 1 closet and a bedroom?
It was a closet and a bedroom. It was
she got the bedroom, so she paid $150.
No, she paid half. She was just smarter than I.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
But my first very own apartment was 2057 West 2nd, right 2nd and U. And it was a 400 square foot studio apartment that faced the alley, had the windows that swung open, very safe for a 20-year-old girl living by herself.
Sure, as a dad,
but
it
was $400 a month.
That's what I paid. $425, my place in the West End.
That same apartment today would be $1,500 a month minimum.
More in my place. I was in the West End, Berkeley and Butte, $425. Yeah. 10th floor, nice. It was big balcony.
Included heat.
Had a pool.
No.
It was only about 18 feet long, but still. I could do half a lap.
So let's give Wilkinson a little bit of a pass on this, or just be like, okay, or walk it back, dude. It's a different world.
Yeah, I mean, it's as far as issues that happened yesterday, on a little scale
that doesn't
of
even
importance, it's amazing what play it's getting, actually. I think maybe media are going, we just need a lighter side of the news today, please.
How about lighter? The BC Greens, now a day ago, put out a want of a public inquiry into money laundering. They have a petition.
The Greens.
The BC
who've been
Greens.
being quiet about this for
BC
2 years.
BCGreens.ca. You just go on there and put in your name and your email address.
Yeah.
And your phone number.
Well,
probably not things you
I
necessarily
can't
want to do unless you want mail-outs from politicians.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's data gathering. I mean, Vision did this so classically. They would do like, we're doing a thing on transit to fill out these forms, and
I totally bid on that.
And then they take that and then they market to you. And actually, the rules for politicians is from the spam laws that we have in Canada is very loose. You can use your lists and you can, as long as you're like, the rules are kind of like if you're having an event, or as long as you're not asking for money, or it's very, there's the rules are pretty loose for politicians. If you're elected, you have to be elected. Oh. But yeah, it's interesting.
A little data capture.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do we want to talk about? It just doesn't seem like, going back to what we were talking about federally, there's a unity problem. Going provincially, bit of a unity problem, which leads us into the city of Vancouver. What?
I know there was a column written by Mike Klassen that I don't agree with. He was actually espousing how great it is that city council is so boring. And I've said this before here where we've talked about council. I'm actually concerned that they are not boring. They are actually ill-prepared,
or
inexperienced, and they are not governing appropriately as far as getting stuff done and giving the proper direction to staff. I've been watching, I watched yesterday all day. I've never seen staff ever say this, I'm sorry, we don't understand what you're actually saying, or what direction are you giving us, ex-councillor,
what do you want us to do here?
What you're putting forward is, in effect, nonsense.
So in that, what was being put forward? Do you recall?
Well, there were several. This is happening a lot. But they were talking a lot about the empty homes tax, which actually they had a report from staff, which was a received report, which is not meant to be. It's just like, this is where we're at and this is where we're going, kind of thing. So the empty homes tax, very controversial. Making over $30 million in revenue.
Just for the sake of somebody who's just tuning in now and going, I don't know the difference between the empty homes tax and the speculation tax. Can you sum up?
Vancouver was the first out of the gate. We did this empty homes tax. We got approval from the province to change.
Which means if your house is empty,
you pay for 6 months, you have to pay this extra tax. It's 1%.
Right, but you can opt out of that by either renting it out or occupying it as your primary residence.
Yeah, or selling it, I suppose, which is what most people are doing. So it's not adding to the rental pool. And in fact, the number of, as the report stated, the number of rental units added to the pile is less than 100. Really.
Total 100.
Total.
100.
Yeah, and they cost them $10 million to set this up, and it's costing $2.5 million, but it's a cash cow now. Anyways. The conversation, they were actually in debate. Well, they had some motions on the floor and they were in debate, and then suddenly they decided they wanted to do something else, and they broke in the middle of the debate, and they haven't gone back to the issue. If they've left it till March 5th, it's like,
so the whole conversation to that point is just like suspended.
Yeah, and you're kind of like, it's like, you're having a debate with your partner, and you say, hold that thought, I'll be back in 2 weeks. And we'll finish this conversation.
Oh, that would go over really well with me.
That
would just be.
It's so weird, and I see this kind of thing, and I'm worried about good governance, and I think that's where there's a theme going on. We're having this inexperience showing through at City Council. If you really like a nerd like me and watch it, you're seeing it happen provincially with this relationship between these three parties, and then what's happening with the Plecas thing. It's like, oh my God, and then you're seeing what's happening in Ottawa, and this issue of this approaching and trying to influence, and it's just like, what is going on? Where is the good governance in our country right now?
But that's what things like the UnSpun podcast are good for. I mean, tooting our own horn a little bit here, but having these discussions are vital, because you and I aren't picking a side here. We're on the side of better governance, right? And it's interesting because I have people saying, well, how would you vote? I'm like, well, if you can't tell, then I'm doing my job. So let's have the discussion without talking about that. By saying I liked the tone of Jody Wilson-Raybould, somebody be like, oh, she's a liberal. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm also really quite angry with the Prime Minister right now for not at least saying, okay, let's rip a page out of good governance and say, we do make mistakes. This was an error of ways. I wish we could go back and talk about SNC-Lavalin and really what's going on with that, what they did, how horrible it would have been had it just been swept under the carpet in the name of just continuing on and for jobs in Quebec. Like how much.
And is it the end of the world if it goes out of business? What happens? What will that look
Are
like?
there
What's
no
the scenario?
other companies? I like that you put it out there about how about all the people that work at SNC-Lavalin working at another Canadian firm and taking all of their knowledge and innovation there and establishing that. Those are jobs.
Yeah.
So there's more than one way to split the wood.
Oh no, you went back to the chopper.
I did. You got to go back to George_Affleck on Twitter, at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y. You can always get us at UnSpun Podcast and at the Orca, theorca.ca. I just wrote a column this week, and it's one that really breaks my heart because I'm at six families I know have been destroyed by the opioid crisis or suicide by impact of untreated addiction or the lack of support for addiction. And I'm just putting out there some thoughts on maybe the middle today is more extreme than we could ever imagine in legalization of hard drugs in our province, perhaps our country.
And important things like that get pushed aside when governments are in chaos. And we have 2 levels of government now in chaos, and in my mind, and then we have the inability of a city council in Vancouver to get a lot of agenda items done because they're spending so much time on new things and this and that. We need to focus on the priorities, and that's one of them.
6. I don't want 7. But I do want you to follow us on Twitter, follow along with us, tell your friends about the UnSpun podcast so they can learn more about politics in the unspun manner that this brilliant gentleman can lay it on the table. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
See you next week.